Good evening, and welcome to the Crucible of Ideas. Tonight, we delve into a question that strikes at the very heart of modern democratic life. Is censorship ever justifiable for the public good? This is a profound dilemma, pitting the foundational principle of individual liberty against the perceived necessity of collective security. To help us navigate this complex terrain, we are joined by two eminent thinkers. Mr. Julian Croft, a former national security analyst, argues for a framework of regulated speech in specific, critical circumstances. Opposing this view is Ms. Ananya Sharma, a distinguished human rights lawyer who posits that freedom of expression must remain absolute.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. I believe we must begin by recalibrating our terminology. The word censorship is deliberately evocative, conjuring images of authoritarian regimes. I propose we discuss this not as censorship, but as public safety regulation in the digital sphere. The notion of absolute, unfettered freedom of speech is a romantic, but ultimately untenable ideal in a world where information travels instantly and globally. We are not living in a quaint marketplace of ideas. We are living in an algorithmic battlefield where malevolent actors exploit our freedoms to inflict profound harm. My position is not one of emotion, but of pragmatism. There are clear, delimited instances where the regulation of content is not just justifiable, but is a moral imperative. Consider the proliferation of child sexual abuse material. Is there anyone who seriously argues for the free speech rights of those who create and distribute such abhorrent content? Consider meticulously crafted terrorist propaganda, designed not for debate, but to recruit and incite immediate violence. Or consider the documented, state-sponsored disinformation campaigns aimed at corroding the very foundations of our democratic processes. These are not abstract threats. They are existential threats to societal cohesion. To stand by and do nothing, to champion a purist ideal while our society is actively undermined, is not a principled stand. It is a dereliction of our duty to protect one another. What I advocate for is a nuanced legal framework, governed by transparent laws and independent oversight, to curtail the most pernicious forms of speech. The absence of such regulation is not freedom. It is a surrender to the most destructive and nihilistic forces in our midst.
Thank you. Mr. Croft's attempt to rebrand censorship as regulation is a semantic tactic we have seen employed throughout history by those who seek to curtail liberty. Let us be unequivocal. Freedom of expression is not merely one right among many. It is the fundamental bulwark against tyranny, the right upon which all other freedoms depend. Once we concede that a government, or any other entity, has the legitimate authority to decide what speech is acceptable, we embark upon a notoriously slippery slope. The initial justifications always sound reasonable: protecting children, ensuring national security. But the definition of harmful or dangerous is dangerously malleable. Who wields this power? Today, it may be used against a terrorist. Tomorrow, it may be used against a political dissident, a minority group, or an inconvenient journalist. History provides a grim catalog of such abuses. The Sedition Act in the U.S., the Public Order Acts in the U.K., all were passed under the guise of public good and were subsequently used to crush dissent. The argument that we need censorship to combat bad ideas is profoundly pessimistic. It assumes the public is a gullible, unthinking mass. The true democratic response to harmful speech is not enforced silence, but robust counterspeech, critical education, and an unwavering faith in the ability of citizens to discern truth from falsehood in a genuine marketplace of ideas. To empower a censor is to foster intellectual atrophy and create a society that is more fragile, not less. The chilling effect is real. People will self-censor, afraid to express unconventional thoughts, and our collective discourse will become an echo chamber of state-approved pabulum. This is an Orwellian path, and the price of the supposed security it offers is our liberty. The risks inherent in censorship are monumental and irreversible, far outweighing any of its purported transient benefits.
Thank you both for those compelling statements. Mr. Croft, Ms. Sharma raises the critical and classic challenge of the, quote, slippery slope. She argues that any power to censor will inevitably be abused. How can any system, no matter how well-intentioned, be truly safeguarded from misuse by those in power?
It's a valid concern, and one that must be the central design principle of any such framework. The safeguard against political abuse is to remove the decision-making from the hands of politicians entirely. I envision a system where a specialized, independent, and non-political judicial body makes these determinations. This body would operate under a strict legal mandate defined by Parliament, with narrow, explicit definitions of what constitutes, for example, direct incitement of violence. Its rulings would be public and subject to appeal. This is not arbitrary power. It is the rule of law extended to the digital realm. Furthermore, Ms. Sharma's marketplace of ideas metaphor is tragically outdated. It presumes a level playing field that simply does not exist. Today's marketplace is governed by algorithms designed for engagement, not truth. They amplify incendiary, emotionally manipulative content, while reasoned, nuanced debate is buried. In this environment, counterspeech often fails to reach the same audience as the original lie. A judicially governed system isn't a slippery slope. It's a necessary handrail on a dangerously treacherous staircase.
Ms. Sharma, a response? Mr. Croft proposes a system of independent judicial oversight based on clear legal statutes to prevent the kind of political abuse you fear. Does such a mechanism not adequately address your concerns about arbitrary power?
It does not, because it rests on a flawed premise that any institution can be hermetically sealed from political pressure and societal bias. Judges are human. They are appointed by political processes and are not immune to the political currents of their time. A law that is narrowly defined today can be reinterpreted by a court tomorrow. The tool, once created, is too tempting for those in power not to try and co-opt it. More fundamentally, this approach treats citizens like children, who must be protected from dangerous thoughts. It fosters a culture of dependence and erodes the very skills of critical thinking and media literacy that are our best long-term defense. A society that outsources its judgment on complex issues to a judicial panel becomes less resilient, less engaged, and less capable of the vigorous debate that democracy requires. The handrail Mr. Croft offers becomes a cage.
Let's apply this to a concrete example. We've seen extensive evidence of foreign state actors attempting to influence elections through social media. Mr. Croft, how would your framework address this without overreach?
My framework would be ideal for this. The judicial body, presented with intelligence from security services, could issue a narrowly tailored order for social media platforms to remove accounts demonstrably linked to a foreign state's intelligence apparatus. It would not be about the content of the speech, but its origin and intent to covertly manipulate our democratic process. This is not censoring domestic debate. It is excising a foreign malignancy.
And this is precisely where the slope begins. What constitutes demonstrably linked? What if a domestic opposition group is accused of having links to foreign powers? This exact tactic is used by autocrats worldwide to delegitimize their critics. Instead of secret orders, the answer is radical transparency. Platforms should be mandated to reveal the source of all political advertising and expose the workings of their algorithms. You fight disinformation with information, not with an eraser.
Let me be clear. My position is not anti-freedom, it is pro-responsibility. It is a recognition that rights are not absolute and must be balanced against the right of a society to exist and function securely. To dismiss these proposals with the, quote, slippery slope fallacy is to willfully ignore the tangible, immediate harm being inflicted upon vulnerable people and upon our democratic health every single day. A society that consciously, carefully, and transparently decides to regulate the most pernicious forms of speech to protect its democratic integrity and its citizens is not weaker, but more resilient, more mature, and ultimately more just.
Mr. Croft speaks of responsibility, but the greatest responsibility we have is to safeguard liberty for future generations. The power to censor is the power to define reality, and that is a power no government or committee can be trusted with. It has been abused every single time it has been granted. The safety that Mr. Croft promises is an illusion, a mirage purchased at the devastating cost of our intellectual freedom, our right to dissent, and our democratic accountability. Once you give up the right to speak freely, you give up the ability to criticize the very people who took that right away. The defense against bad ideas is not, and has never been, silence. It is a courageous, unwavering, and sometimes difficult commitment to more speech, more debate, and more truth. We must trust ourselves and each other to win that battle.
And on that note, we must conclude. My sincere thanks to Mr. Julian Croft and Ms. Ananya Sharma for an exceptionally insightful and vigorous debate. You have expertly illuminated the central tension of our age, the profound and ongoing challenge of balancing the cherished right to individual liberty with the collective need for security. We hope this discussion encourages you, our audience, to continue reflecting on these crucial questions. Good evening.